All right, we're back again working on the next installment of the diner. I worked a little bit off camera to get some parts done. Today we're going to paint some additions to the exterior. I want to do the flag today, and I want to do some of the newspaper stands in front. I love doing the newspaper stands. It's part of Americana that we actually do put those in. God knows in a couple 20, 30 years, we might not have newspapers around, and this will really be a historical data. People look at this and say, "What was that, Dad?" And you'll be able to tell them newspapers, and they'll look at you with a puzzled look. Okay, we're going to do the American flag first. I made a little mistake when I actually painted this, or rather when I drew it in. I put the wrong number of red bars. And I don't want to go down in trouble with that. So I'm going to correct that right now. That's a good thing about painting. You could correct all the mistakes you made with your pencil. And I was probably in a delirious state when I did the pencil. So we're going to fix that right now. We're going to drop the dark area right now to that point. We're going to put the stars in later when the blue dries. There's absolutely no sense to do it now. It'd be a bloody mess for one thing. So all we're going to do is put in the big, broad blue expanse on top. We're going to put in little bars of red. Later on, when the paint dries, I'm going to go back over it and probably with white, clean it really clean. Make it very smooth and polished looking. Right now I'm just interested in getting color. And now if I have the color in just right, I should have no problem taking care of details. So the first thing we do is put the entire expanse of blue in. Later on we'll take care of the stars. I'm not going to count each one. For one thing, the flag is furled, and there's no need for me to be exact about numbers at this point. The tough part is going to be the red bars that go across. I'm going to have a real tough time with that. Because, again, the flag is furled, there's a bit of wind blowing it. And what I'm going to do is roughly put the red in as soon as I'm done with the blue. I added a little bit of Payne's Gray to the blue I had. I want it to be a little dark. The blue I had, I'm using like a cobalt blue, and I found that I needed to oomph it a bit with a little bit of Payne's Gray. And that's going to be nice and strong. I'm going to get rid of all the blue that's in my brush, because now I'm going to go back to the red. And we're just going to do the bars across. Again, I think the red I'm using is a little weak. That's cadmium red. I'm going to put a little intensity into it by putting a little bit of a darker red in there, and it's going to really work out better. So let's see how this works. I'm also putting a little drop of water in there to make it a little bit more liquid. So when I put this on the canvas, I don't want it spreading too much. I want it to be, I always say to people, they ask me what type of blend, how much water do I go with the actual paint. I like a good 50-50. There's got to be at least 50% pigmentation along with a little bit of flexibility, so water is what I use. You have your purists who say you don't mix anything with the paint. And there are those who use extenders. I don't like extenders. I find they change the color. They make it less intense. So I use strictly water. Water does not diffuse the intensity of the color. If I find later on that the color is a little bit weak, I could easily go over it again with, believe it or not, a second dash of the same color. Let's say cadmium red, is probably going to make it nice and strong. Here we go. I'm just using the same brush too, by the way. It's a pointer brush. I'm going to go into that like that. I find the best way to deal with this, people say, how do you get such a nice fine line? I just know how to control the brush rather well. We're going to do the same thing with the next bar. The good thing about this, nobody's going to criticize the authenticity of this flag. It is furled. I'm not trying to present what I would consider the perfect flag. Wind is blowing it. It's going to serve its purpose rather well. I'm just glad to get it in a recognizable position. Ideally, you want to paint a flag from right to left. It just so happened that the way it's situated, it's facing the other way. Nothing wrong with that. Just the wind happened to be going that way that day. Now the next step, once I get the flag done, I'm going to move down and work on the newspaper boxes. I always have a history of newspapers in my blood. One of my first jobs, I worked at the New Britain Herald for 15 years. Started up in the advertising department, worked my way into the newsroom. I was the artist there for many years. And it's kind of funny that here I am painting newspaper boxes all these years later. And that's unfortunately the downfall of many newspapers. The circulation's dipping. People get more of their information, their news from television or cable than they do from a newspaper. Let's face it, a newspaper is always 24 hours old. We're spoiled by having news that's just fresh and given to us immediately. But I tell you the truth, I miss the old days when you could sit down and read the paper in depth, get all the information you want, and actually have time to make your own personal observation on the thing. You're not listening to one biased opinion, you're making your own. I still buy newspapers, I still read them every day, and I still make my own observations, and I like that. Unfortunately, I see today ahead of us, it's looming there, that we're not going to have newspapers dropped in our yard. I hope it doesn't come in my lifetime. I'll miss them very much. I love newspapers. I love the fact that you could sit there and in 1 hour read everything that's currently important. I'm going to miss the day when I have to rely on television or any other source. It's not like having a newspaper. When you flip on the computer, it's too random. You're actually being told what to read. In a newspaper, you could pretty much be your own editor. You could filter out what you don't want to read. On television, you're pretty much fed the information and you simply eat it. Thank God for papers. Like I said, I grew up with them. My first job was a paperboy when I was about 11. And I miss those days. I miss them intensely. And that's why, number one of the reasons I'm doing this painting, it is a bit of Americana. Even right down to the newspaper stands. We're not going to have those pretty soon. Diners, thank God for diners. I think they'll outlast everything. Okay, the flag looks pretty good. Like I said, I'm probably going to go back over the white bars. I might make the red bars just a little bit thicker. They look a little bit lean. So I'll put a little bit fresh paint in there, go back over the red bars, and make them a little bit thicker. Because the wind's blowing, they don't have to be perfect. We just have to make sure that they are unison, that they're in the same area. And And like I said, I'm going to go back over this later at my discretion and make amendments to it. Don't have to be perfect right now. It's tough enough doing this in front of a camera and trying to make sure you don't blow it. It's a real testament to my ability to paint that I could hold this together and not. But you know, a lot of times you want to show people that it can be done. There's no trick. I think I'm encouraging people by doing this in front of a camera. They could see that there's no trickery. Anybody could do this. I personally think if you like to do a building like this, let's say you own a storefront business and you want to do a painting of it, I'm showing you that it's not impossible. Or if you know somebody that has a business, this is great. I envision that when the person who owns this diner sees this, when Frank and his wife see this, they might actually want me, they might actually make a reduction of this and make it into a business card. There's so many things that can be done with this. I also want to do a pen and ink drawing of it. But in this day and age, everybody wants color. So this would probably be better suited as a color reproduction. There we go. I think it looks pretty good. Okay, let's get back. The next step is we're going to do the blue box. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to give anything other than we'll say the blue box, the yellow box, the two reds, and the big flashy white one, which everybody knows what it is. You know, it's kind of a joke not to, so let's do the blue one first. That looks like a real estate type of box. The interesting thing, there's several different colors of blue on there. We have to acknowledge them. We can't just make the whole thing blue. That would be ridiculous. So I'm going to take this blue, I'm going to take a little bit of Payne's Gray, mix it, so all of a sudden we have a dark blue. I'm going to take a little bit of the blue we were using, put a little bit of white in there, right next to it like that. I'm going to take a little bit of white, or, you know, maybe I'll take a lighter blue, mix it in with that. Some of this is like an aqua blue. And basically it's all going to be the same blue, it's just that light hits it at a different angle, creating a lighter type of blue. Instead of coming up with three separate colors, which there are people out there who actually buy 3 tubes of blue, one a light blue, one a dark blue, that's ridiculous. Just use the same blue and add either Payne's Gray or add white. It's so much cheaper and cost effective. And you still retain that little bit of real blue is what you want. All right, I think I got a pretty good inkling of what I'm going to do. We're going to go into that first box. We'll do the dark parts first. The dark parts are usually any part of the box that folds under, which would be here. What that is just a part of the box that folds under. No source of light is making it in there. I have to clean the brush off. There's a lot of dried paint that is lodged in there, and it's making the paint, it's making my brush very hard to work. Now, we got that one pretty good. It's just a more solid blue. Okay, we're going to darken it up a bit. The next step, we're going to do the side of the particular box, which is also on the dark side. We're going to use the same color that we use on the underbelly. That's going to create the illusion of depth. Here we go. I'd rather get this done now. We could always do it later, but it's kind of nice to create part of that atmosphere now. Later on, when I do some highlights or correcting, it'll be easier to have the beginning of it done. I'm going to make it darker. It's still blue, but it's a darker blue, just to show that it's a different angle. The box is turned. Put a little bit more blue into that. By the way, if you're curious, I'm using a Windsor blue. It's a little bit darker than most cobalt blues, or for that matter, most other blues that you find. When I'm talking about darker blues, I like to either use Prussian, or in this case, like I said, Prussian's really good too, but it's got a distinctive, almost purplish glow to it. So I stick with this one. We're going to leave a little area in the center. There seems to be a little piece of information. Obviously, I'm not that good a painter that I'm going to put every word in. I'm going to indicate that there's something there. It's going to be neat to have every one of these boxes individually addressed. That's my little gesture, my little tip of the hat to the newspaper industry. I'm here to tell you, I grew up in newspapers. Sunday was my favorite day of the week. I'd go out and buy 3 or 4 copies of every paper that was out there, and I'd read every page of it. At one point in my life, I wanted to be a writer, or at least be a contributor to some sort of newspaper. I wanted to be an artist the whole life too, and I always wanted to either be a writer or a cartoonist, something along that line. It's sad that the modern generation obviously is not going to really be filled with that desire. If they're going to be cartoonists, they really have to approach it from a different point of view. Still could be a cartoonist, but you're using your computer more than a pad of paper. But I still say the most important tool is your head. And the best way to be a good cartoonist is be open to ideas, read everything, catch stuff. The problem with people who are exclusively computer driven is that they don't see enough of reality, and they're consumed with the computer. You still need to read and find out stuff and be informed. To be electronically aware is not the same as being alert, reading, being onto all sorts of stuff. And I don't mean watching reality TV. That is not the same as really reading and watching stuff, observing what's happening. All right, here we go. I've got the back end painted real nicely. Remember, I got about 4 boxes to go after this one, all different colors. The trick to that is they're all going to be different colors, and we have to make individual parts of those darker or lighter as it's given. I can't do that, but just simply adding Payne's gray to make it darker. Sometimes that looks ridiculous. It's more of a case of taking the color that each box is and just making it darker or lighter as it's needed. The trick between a good painting and a bad painting is not in just tipping your hat to what's darker and what's lighter. It's making sure the color is true. And I'll show you as we go along what I'm talking about. I'm liking the way these boxes are turning out. I love the fact that I knew enough not just to put the colors in the right colors, but to make sure I'm making them dark in the right places and yet still keeping the tone of the color correct. There we go. Almost down to the back end completely. I have to be careful though, because it comes to a certain point when you have a dark paint meet up next to a light one, you don't want the two to blend. Fortunately, with acrylics, they dry rather quickly, and I'm going to have no problem, especially under these hot lights. The acrylics are probably dry right now, as far as I'm concerned, probably usable. I won't have a problem. Oil, on the other hand, if I was using oil, it'd still be wet, and there'll still be an issue involved. Though under these lights, God knows, it might not be such an issue. Now, on TV, this might look like very dark, like maybe even black. Close up, you can actually see that it's a very dark blue. That's one thing I hate to say, but TV tends to make artwork look great because it eliminates a lot of detail. It homogenizes color. That's why on television, anybody's artwork looks fantastic. I'm not going to be picking on anybody, but even somebody like Bob Ross, whose work is rather slapdash, on TV it looks incredible. And I got to give the guy credit. He's come up with a genre that everybody could embrace. They could paint to their heart's content. They don't have to look at a source. They could just rely on their own little imagination. But there are limitations to that. If you ever looked at a Bob Ross close-up, you'd know what I'm talking about. It looks great on TV. Up close, you see the limitations. We're going to make the bottom of this box equally, not quite as dark as the side, but we're going to make it this blue, which is just a tad lighter. And again, you might not be able to discern that from your screen. You'd really have to see the painting up close to see the difference. It's very nominal. Here we go. The front of the bottom is being done. We're going to get that going right now. It's just a touch lighter. And I just want to get that going before. I'm glad I got the flag done. That's great. That's going to be really important. The flag I thought was going to be a little bit longer to do, but it ended up being, actually just ended up being nice and easy. Like I said, I'm going to spend a lot of time off camera doing individual things like the stars. The top of this, where light hits it, I'm going to take a lighter blue. Remember, I made that up already. I mixed in a little bit of white. I'm going to do a little bit more of that now because remember we were talking about how hot lights make paint dry, even on a palette like this. This is a Masterson Stay Wet device, which really makes the paint last a long time, even under hot lights. It's not made specifically for that. It's made for anybody who paints. You can make your paint up, acrylics, let's say. You could make the colors suitable to your individual need, and when you're done, instead of throwing it away, you put it in your fridge. And it's perfect. It'll last for weeks. If you remember, there's a sponge inside of it. You got to remember to keep the sponge nice and wet. And this could actually last for weeks. I don't recommend keeping it much longer than that. I think after a while, there's a chance that your paints are going to get a little bit, let's face it, after a while you don't want to I personally clean the sponge out as frequently as once a week. And the paints tend to get a little dry no matter what, and dingy. So we got the top part of that, a nicer, lighter blue. It actually could be even lighter, but I could do that at a later date. I'm just happy that I see a nominal difference as it is. The side of that, it's got a big ad in it. Probably the vending company has some sort of thing announcing that the latest issue is inside. There might be some individual piece of information. Anyway, the side of it's going to be a little bit darker, not as dark as the back. So I'm going to take a nice flat blue, the real blue that we're using, and we're going to simply use the real blue right there. Tad darker than this, the bottom where the light's hitting it directly, and not nearly as dark as the side where there's no source of light. It's all a matter of small little angles, and you might not notice it on a TV screen, but if you saw it up close, you would know immediately. And you'd probably say, yep, you caught it. The blue itself is just a tad, garish, and again, that could be reinterpreted as time goes by. Well, I want to thank everybody for viewing in tonight. The next episode, we're going to work on more of the boxes, try to get as many newspaper boxes in as possible. Again, that's part of Americana I love. I embrace it. To me, that's what makes this type of painting special. We don't have enough of it in real life, and I like it. I hope you all enjoy it. I hope you are getting a kick, because every time you drive by this diner, you'll say, geez, I just saw somebody painting on TV last night. That makes my day. I'd like to bring someone's attention to things like this. It's very important. We have it right in our community. Could you imagine Plainville? There's only a handful of really beautiful diners in the state, traditional diners, and we have one right in our midst. I know I go there as often as I can. Okay, we're almost set with this individual box. Just a little bit more blue will do it. I'm not going to try to paint the newspaper inside the window. I'm not that good. I think I'll just try to get general colors in. Here we go. That's looking pretty good. Now, there's little blues on the side. We'll try to get those in. Tough part's going to be getting the newspaper inside the window. All right. I want to thank everybody for viewing in tonight. And like I said, we'll be back next episode with more of the newspaper boxes. The people here at Nutmeg are really great.